Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 34, our player profile on Courtney Big Goose Laws, the man who started late and had county trials before playing a single competitive match. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, we're back again. We're following on with the next of our player profiles, and I'm joined as always by Dan. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I've got this week. We're looking at Courtney Laws, the corpse, or Big Goose, as he's known.
why the corpse?
Well, I may have added the because it sounded better. He's known as Corpse or Big Goose. I did read that Corpse is a play on his name because he's Courtney and then Laws ends with ES, but I prefer to think that it's to do with the damage that he does to people, maybe crossed with a little bit what he looks like.
I wouldn't say that to him myself. No, fair enough. And how about Big Goose? What's that one about?
I think Big Goose is literally just what he looks like. He's obviously he's incredibly tall. I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute. But in his early career, well, not his career, but his younger days playing rugby, as with most young guys, he was pretty gangly. And he used to sort of lollop around the place. And I think, it's just, he's this big, Big Goose. I guess it just sounds a little bit like what he does. I don't know, it sounds offensive. I kind of see it as a good thing, but
fair enough.
They are the two nicknames that I have come across to describe Courtney Linford Laws. Mum Val, Dad Linford, hence the middle name, and one brother Cameron, who's 20, and by all accounts also not a professional rugby player as far as I can tell, but at 6'5", also a pretty big lad. And I guess watch this space, because as I'm gonna cover in a moment, it didn't take Courtney long to go from touching a rugby ball for the first time to getting some pretty good plaudits. He's 6'7", so he's like ridiculously tall. He's 118 kilos, which is 18 stone 8. So he's a big old man. He doesn't look that heavy, does he? I guess at 6'7", yes. Well, yeah, you
so
can
much
spread
length
the weight
for you to carry the weight.
I was going to say, you get to spread the weight out a little bit, don't you, with those extra feet. But yeah, he's married to Jess. They have 2 kids: Nellie, who is his daughter, who was born in 2013, and his son Teddy, who was actually born earlier this year. So congratulations to them. He's a back row / lock. But interestingly, he began playing on the wing. Mind you, not professionally.
Okay.
Not professionally. But that was when he started out. He started off on the wing. As I guess a lot of people, when they, particularly if you're coming into rugby late, you don't really know rugby, so you kind of go, oh, well, I'll just stick out on the wing. I can always remember when we were having to select the team for Isha. And there was always, 1 or 2 guys that wanted to play but didn't really know what rugby was. And you kind of had a responsibility to kind of give them a chance, and they always ended up on the wing, because then if you didn't need them, you could get away with not giving them the ball. But,
I think that's probably although wing's a massively important position, it's also a position that, especially at the lower level, is going to cause less damage.
Yeah, at the lower levels, of course, as you say, it's pretty key once you get a bit further down the road. But anyway, so 58 caps for England. 2 caps, as we now know, for the British and Irish Lions, and 127 caps for Northampton. The Northampton Saints, his only professional team, so another one-club man. He had his England debut against Australia in 2009, but before we get on to his international career, this is a guy who first picked up a rugby ball at the age of 13. Okay? He had county trials 2 months after his first ever rugby training session and before playing a single competitive game.
How did that happen?
How do you mean?
Well, if he hasn't played a single competitive game, how's he suddenly been looked at for the county?
So one of the coaches at, I think this was when it was at Northampton School for Boys, who also produced Ben Cohen and Steve Thompson. But one of the coaches just immediately saw this potential, this guy who had all this potential, obviously knew someone who was on the county the county selection committee or one of the scouts or something called him and just said, look, you've got to come and have a look at this guy. He didn't make the county team, but he had a trial. They came down and clearly saw something in him. I mean, he said himself, he went to Northampton School for Boys, as I mentioned. That was in 2002, age 13. They were a school that was pretty strong on rugby. He was massively into sport generally, and he just thought, yeah, rugby, I'll have a go at that. I've not tried it before. And in his first sort of session, his trials, he smashed about 8 people. Absolutely loved that part of the game, and yeah, just that was it. That was where he fell in love with rugby. He said himself, he was offside, he was out of position, he didn't know what the hell he was doing. But the fact that it was a sport at school that allowed you to smash people, he was sign me up. So that was where he began on the wing. So yeah,
I can 100% picture that. I can just see the Courtney Laws, not knowing, as none of us would know in a first training session, but him just destroying people. I can 100% picture that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it didn't take long for him to be scooped up by the Northampton Old Scouts, who I don't know a huge amount about, but again, Ben Cohen and Steve Thompson. I think actually Ben Cohen and Steve Thompson were the Old Scouts. Steve Thompson was at school, not with him, but at the same school. But yeah, he moved there, and it was there that they moved him from the wing into the back row initially. Played a little bit at number 8, obviously played on the flank, and then eventually they were like, look, this guy's 6'7", what's he doing at the back? Let's stick him in the middle. So that's where he found his way into lock. 2007, he was playing for England under-18s. So, I guess when you look at it and you say 5 years to make your way from schoolboy level to England under-18 is pretty normal. But when you consider that he's first touching a rugby ball at the age of 13, and most of the guys that go through this, they started playing when they were like 7. That's a hell of an achievement to go,
I think that's incredible, yeah.
2002 to 2007 and make the under-18s. The following year, in 2008, England under-20. He was the only guy from the summer tour who got selected for the Saxons at the beginning of the following year in 2009. The same year that he signed with Northampton Saints senior side. He'd signed with their academy the year before. And then in 2009, in November, so the Autumn International, it would have been the Autumn International series. He got his England call up, his senior England call up under one Mr. Martin Johnson.
Wow, that was earlier than I thought.
Yeah, so I think that the thing is this is kind of like his career is just beginning, and his early career was massively ridden with injury. He's really struggled to cement an England his England place because he was constantly out injured, which I didn't realise about him, and I guess that makes sense because there were other people around, and if he wasn't playing that much, then he probably wasn't at the forefront of everybody's mind, and so he was there or thereabouts, but just the injuries just meant that he couldn't get in there and really cement his place. He was involved in the 2011 World Cup, but he got a 2-match ban for hitting the Argentine hooker Mario Ledesma or Mario Ledesma? Mario, I think.
I think it's Mario, yeah.
So I haven't actually looked it up and had a look and seen what kind of damage he caused, but a little bit of a cheap shot there, and it got him a 2-match ban, which obviously is not ideal when you're just starting out. And although he did come back, I think against Scotland, he was then dropped to the bench a little later on, and it never really happened for him. And then in 2012, Jim Mallender actually ruled him out of the of England duty for the summer tour just because of injury, and he subsequently lost his place to Joe Launchbury for both the Autumn Internationals and the 2013 Six Nations. And as we know, that's just a sort of an ongoing issue, really, isn't it, for the second row? Like a good problem to have, but the second row has, with Launchbury, Laws, Itoje, and Cruz, all good enough to do the job. All more than good enough to do the job because they'd probably compete for any international side in the world. And then you've still got people like Yules and the young guy Nick Isekwe is kind of knocking on the door, and you can usually think of someone that I haven't thought of. Who else is
Atwood.
there? Atwood, yes.
There's a wealth of them, but I think, like you said, those first 4 you mentioned, the Cruz, Itoje, Laws, and Launchbury. I think they're definitely the leading four.
Absolutely. And, look, he's going to be, 30 come the World Cup? So, still more than, he's by no stretch is he too old. I think all of them are in the same boat. Obviously, Itoje is only about 22 or something. Maybe a little bit older than that. But yeah, so they're the four guys, surely, unless something goes horribly wrong. I think, unfortunately, your Ewells and your Atwoods and even your young, Nick Asiekwe, he's going to be one of those guys, I think, who probably is quite unlucky, like a Simon Shaw, who was a great lock, but because of Martin Johnson as a player, Simon Shaw didn't really get a look in until much later on in his career, when really he was probably past his best.
Yeah, although in the 2009 Lions, was it 2000? He was absolutely epic, and he was pretty old then. But
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, you kind of just assume that his best was when he was sort of a bit younger, but it just wasn't ever quite as good as Martin Johnson, and therefore, unfortunately, you miss out. And I think that's probably going to be a similar story for a few of the guys who are knocking at the door. Although, look, Eddie Jones is the right man to make changes if the players warrant it. I think possibly back in the Johnson days, not that you'd ever want to have dropped Martin Johnson, because he offered more than just what he could do in the second row. But I think it was much more of an old boys club back then. And once you'd kind of made a name for yourself, it was unlikely that big changes were going to get made unless you really kind of really messed up. Which I like about Eddie Jones, because you can be great, but still not quite be good enough. You could have a really good game, but someone else is still considered better than you, and therefore you get dropped. And it's kind of,
it's
do you know
tough,
what I mean?
it's brutal.
I don't think we would see that very often, but I quite like that there's no scenario where anyone can sort of think, unless you're Christian Wade, there's no scenario where anyone can think I don't have a chance. I don't know what it is with Christian Wade. Why is that guy just basically been ruled out?
There's clearly, I think Eddie Jones has said, hasn't he? Eddie Jones has said that he doesn't suit the way they play or the way they're looking to play. I think Eddie Jones is just, I think he's very worried about him defensively, because he was the same with Chris Ashton, wasn't he? Yeah. Fair enough, Chris Ashton got banned, but he just said, look, defensively he's not strong enough. So that does seem to be a key thing for Eddie Jones, to have that sort of defensive capability. And I mean, I don't know though, because Christian Wade, fair enough. I mean, we've got to look. We've got some brilliant wings.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't feel like the England team is lacking because they're not including Christian Wade. I kind of almost just feel a bit sorry for him, because even on a tour like the Argentina tour in June, if you can't even get a call up then, when you're someone that's been talked about a lot as being right on the verge, then that sends a bit of a message, doesn't it?
Yeah, especially when Eddie Jones says he's picked for best team available, which isn't, that's about as believable as the time a teacher found a packet in my pocket and I tried to convince him it was oregano because I didn't like school dinners. But what was he's it? Clean. It was oregano, mate. I don't like school dinners.
Fair enough. Just like you're into the culinary arts, and you like to just spice things up. You just needed to give the school dinners a little bit more flavour.
Yeah, the fact it was my biology teacher and I tried to convince him I'm a mini herbologist didn't necessarily add weight to my argument, but
Fair enough. Look, we're digressing a little bit because, of course, we're here to talk about Courtney Lawes. So, yeah, question for you. Well, it's not really a question for you in so much as I don't think there's an answer just yet. But, we've mentioned four guys. One of them we have to drop because the Matchday 23, as things stand, the Matchday 23 will only include three of them. We won't go as far as to pick our starters because I'm not sure that that's necessary just yet. But as things stand right now, of those four, who's the one that doesn't get included in a Matchday 23?
I haven't got a bloody clue, but... this is so tough.
Let's start by saying then. I was going to say, let's start by saying, this is about Courtney Lawes. Is Lawes included in the 23? Does he offer something that? So if we have to include Courtney Lawes,
you have to include Lawes and Itoje.
So you've got to include Laws and Itoje. They're now saying that Launchbury not only should he have been on the Lions tour, but he would have been the best lock on tour had he been selected, and could have been the difference between. I mean, I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but could have been the difference between drawing and winning the test, the series. Does that mean that you kind of have to include him too?
I think you have to include Launchbury just because every time that I'm not sure I'm convinced about the difference between drawing and winning, but I think you have to include Launchbury because every time that guy plays, we saw in Argentina, we saw England Six Nations when he comes on, he just puts in not just a shift, he puts in a brilliant performance. The guy's a machine.
Do you think that we're guilty of being kind of overly fickle? Because before the Lions tour, we couldn't talk enough about George Kruis, who hadn't really had any game time. He'd just come back from injury, and everyone was saying, "Yeah, but he's just so good. He has to be included. He has to go. He has to be part of the setup." He then had a couple of not bad games, but not certainly not his best. Got dropped from the Test side, and now he seems to be the one that everyone's saying, "Yeah, he might not be the one that makes the 23 for England because Launchbury, Laws, and Itoje are the three that you want." I mean, I'm probably in danger of making it impossible to answer the question because it is clearly going to be a case of let's see how the beginning of the new season looks. But yeah.
I think if it was tomorrow, for me, Kruis is out but I don't think he's had the game time to prove himself. So it's not because he's done anything wrong. But the problem with Kruis is he's such a presence, like just physically as much as anything. Physically, he's probably the most capable of a lot of them. He runs that line out so well. But actually, when he's playing well, he's one of the first on. But just we're talking, if it's tomorrow, based on form, I would probably leave Kruis out. But then you've got to, I guess, Itoje has to run the line out then.
Well, but does it? So obviously Kruis runs the line out for Saracens. With Itoje therefore not running the line out. Laws runs the line out for Northampton. And I think Launchbury runs the line out for Wasps, doesn't he?
Oh, I didn't think Launchbury was the line out guy. And I think I thought that was one of the reasons why he didn't make the Lions.
Maybe I've got it wrong. But then, okay, so if we say Laws and Kruis are the line-out runners, and we're saying that Itoje has to be included, does that mean that you put Laws in with Itoje to start, with Laws running the line-out, and then Launchbury's on the bench? Or is Laws more of an impact player? We saw him obviously work to great effect as an impact player for the Lions. Is that where you see him for England, or...?
I don't mind either way actually. But whether him, so at the moment I've got Itoje starting, and then it's between Laws and Launchbury. But we've also seen Launchbury come on and really pick up the tempo. I mean, Laws probably adds more of an impact from a visible perspective, as in he's more likely to go and just smash someone and put them back. Whereas Launchbury, just that continual work rate, constantly moving forward, does seem to sort of lift the tempo, so has that impact. So either way, I don't mind which one of them.
No, I hear you. I'm actually leaning towards Laws starting because I kind of think that the aggression that he brings is more valuable at the beginning of a game when you can put a team on the back foot and kind of dictate the sort of the way the match is going to go. Whereas, as you say, Launchbury's ability to just the work rate, his ability to come in and raise the work rate of everyone around him is possibly more valuable in the last 20, 25 minutes. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? I think of the four, Kruis is the one that I would look at as least like a finisher. And Itoje, I just think, is going to be one of the first names on the team sheet. And ultimately, if not by the autumn, he's going to be the England captain. So he'll be a fixture. So I think I might be with you. And as we say, the season is kicking off fairly soon, and anything can happen. Kruis might end up being, European Player of the Year, and we're all sitting here in 6 months' time going, which one do we get rid of, Launchbury or Laws? You just don't know. And obviously, hopefully, touch wood, there's no injuries that are going to dictate this. It's going to be purely down to form. But tough decisions ahead in the second row. I guess another option, particularly given that both the Itoje and Laws have experience playing in the back row as well, is to look at having all four of them involved in the 23 and reduce one of your back row replacements.
Well, that is what actually may well happen. That I think is probably more likely to happen because all four of them are 100% good enough to be in the England squad for matchday squad. And it's not just about being good enough, as in all four of them have a place to add value to any match.
And actually, if we look at our back row, okay, we've got Billy, fit and healthy. He's our starting number 8. You're probably looking at Haskell and Robshaw as the flankers. But then actually, the kind of the cover for them, you've got Nathan Hughes at number 8. That's fine. But then the flank covers. It's the youngsters. It's the likes of the Curry brothers, and that's. It's not that I wouldn't want to see them coming through, and I think we will start to see them coming through. And we may find that your James Haskells, your Chris Robshaws are getting a bit too old come the next World Cup, and therefore actually the move is to look to have the Currys actually replace them in the starting side. But there isn't a lot of cover, with huge amounts of experience in the same way as when we look at 4 world class second rows for 2 positions.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I wonder whether we see a sort of a situation where perhaps we have all 4 of them involved, and maybe the people like the Currys are the ones that miss out on that experience in these early stages.
That could well be it with have them in and around the squad and gradually trying to integrate them, because with the second row, yes, Itoje, yes, Laws can play back row, but I don't think we're necessarily going to be wanting to look at them as the future back row moving forward. So at some point, I think you need to integrate these younger lads.
Oh, you absolutely do, but I don't think you would be looking at them as the back row. I think you would be looking at them as we want the ability to be able to bring them onto the pitch for everything that they can do. Whether it's in the scrum or whether it's in open play. But there are only 2 positions, and having an extra one of them in a position to come on is more valuable to the team than having one of the Curry brothers on the bench. Do you know what I mean? So I agree.
Oh yeah,
and it's one of the reasons why I think the autumn internationals will be really interesting. I had a long kind of Twitter, not war, but a sort of heated debate with 3 or 4 guys about what we might see over the course of the next sort of 6 months or so. They were all sort of saying, it's definitely going to be, he's going to pick his first team. All of the best guys are going to be on the Argentina. The autumn are going to be involved in the autumn internationals. That's when we're finally going to see what this England team really looks like. But you and I, we've been talking about it in just in passing, but also in our last couple of episodes. And the more we talk about it, the more I kind of think, I think he will rest players. I think he's going to. I think he's going to wait until the Six Nations next year to sort of say, here is my World Cup squad, or here's my World Cup team as it stands today. If the World Cup started tomorrow, these are the guys that I would be selecting as my 23. I think that's when we're going to see it, and I think there'll be some big names left out. I think
there's bound to be.
I think Owen Farrell might miss out on the autumn internationals. I think.
Well, he hasn't he said he's going to rest some of these big names.
He's very carefully alluded to the fact that he might.
Right.
So he's kept his options open. But
well done, Eddie.
Someone like an Itoje, if he's cemented, I would suggest you leave him behind, and you've got your Launchbury, Laws, and Cruz, and all 3 can be involved in every game. I think that's possibly the way that you go there. It's a good opportunity for the back 3. Billy may well still be injured. I'm not quite sure what the latest is on his injury. But yeah, he may well still be injured, so it might be that Nathan Hughes has another shot. Although he's obviously done a decent job of showing what he's made of, so I guess that one. I don't know if he's fit. Do you take Billy? I think maybe you do, just because he's missed out on a lot of rugby.
No, if he's fit, I think yeah, of course you take Billy because getting back into the fold. But I mean, I know when sort of speaking to the pod doc and things, that episode with him, it sounded like Billy's could take a while to be up to full fitness.
Yeah,
but again,
autumn internationals are November.
Yeah, and again, I have no idea how his progress is looking at the moment. Actually.
And I think his injury was like June.
No, it was before, wasn't it?
Before June. So
because it was after the semi-final, wasn't it?
So November would be about 6 months.
Mm.
So I think he might well be right on the cusp of being fit again. In which case, yeah, you probably do take him. Like you say, just give him that game time again. Just get him back in the fold. Get some of the youngsters who are going to undoubtedly go on this tour. I keep calling it a tour. Go to Twickenham and play in these internationals. Get them the experience of playing with him, because that's always, I imagine, a pretty unique experience. But your Haskells, possibly even although he didn't go on. Line didn't have, it wasn't on lines due to Rob Shaw. Maybe do you take the punt and say, I'm going to leave them both behind actually, and stick the two Curries in and just blood them that way?
I think it will only be the Lions that miss out, and probably only like Test match Lions. I think Haskell was too busy having a bromance with Sean O'Brien to be too knackered to play. But
but I'm thinking less about resting them and more about a tactical way to try out new players and new options. Like one of the things that came out of the Twitter conversation was people saying the last thing we want to be doing is testing new people so close to a World Cup. But we talked about it in the last episode. What I quite like about this is that actually what you're doing is you would kind of almost be introducing a team that kind of seemed new but wasn't that new. Like it would almost be quite an experienced new side. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it does make sense. And as the sort of testing new people, I agree with that sentiment. You don't want to suddenly, like, for argument's sake, you don't want to bring in a let's say a Sekwe. If realistically, does he have a chance of making the 2019 World Cup? It's not looking likely because of the current second row we've got. So it's probably not worth testing those lot out. But when you look at like the Curry boys, for example, thinking, yeah, they are likely to make not likely, but they have. It's very possible they could make the World Cup because a few of the guys there are getting a bit older.
Yeah.
So they're probably the next in row. So I think it's that fine line, isn't it, between sort of blooding young guys, but blooding them for a purpose, blooding them because they could well be on that plane to Japan.
Yeah, no, definitely. Again, we are digressing again. So before we bring this one to an end, just to kind of go back to Big Goose.
Goose.
One of the things that I found not so much interesting, but just that I really like about Courtney Laws and reading about him, it just sort of cements this. Is his kind of his attitude to rugby, I guess, to life, is very chilled out. He's got a Jamaican dad. He says that a lot of it comes from his dad. His dad's very much the same way. It's like, there's no point in getting angry. There's no point in getting upset. Obviously there are times, his pardon me, his 2-match ban in the World Cup was a good example of it. But generally speaking, you don't hear a lot about him, disciplinary problems. He doesn't really dwell on stuff. And I quite like the fact that for him, he loves this game, and the most important thing is that he continues to do so. And I think that comes across in the way that he plays, because he looks very passionate about what he does. It doesn't hurt that he's 6'7", 18 stone 8, and what he loves doing is smashing people. But he just seems to get a lot of joy out of doing it, which is nice.
There's nothing more annoying on a rugby pitch when you get absolutely buried by someone and then they're a really good guy about it. And then, you know, you could, like, if somebody buries you, then standing over you aggressive, you're just like, oh, I'm going to go for you. But somebody, you know, just smashes you, and it's like, oh, hello, mate, how are you? Get up. You go, oh, nothing more annoying. Because you don't want the person hurting you to be a good guy, which it sounds like Courtney Laws is.
Absolutely, and I look forward to seeing how the next season progresses for him. I think it'll be a very interesting battle between the 4 second row, and he has as good a chance as anyone of cementing a place. He hasn't done it yet. Competition's been pretty aggressive, but we've seen on the Lions tour, we've seen when he's been in an England shirt in the past, he's definitely got the talent to do it. So an interesting year, interesting couple of years ahead, obviously, but certainly an interesting sort of 6 months or so as the season progresses to see where things go for the autumn internationals and come the beginning of 2018 when Six Nations rolls around once again. Guys, thanks again for listening. As always, please, if you get the opportunity, or if you don't, try and find the opportunity to go on iTunes, rate us, review us. Just let us know what you think. It really would help us out because it just means that we can spread the word, and that's what we're trying to do at the moment. Also, check out the website, www.englandrugbypod.com, and you can get in touch with us on social media at England Rugby Pod. Also, when you're on iTunes, subscribe, because that way you don't have to worry about downloading the episodes. They'll download straight to your phone and you can just listen to them when you've got a spare moment. And that's hopefully what appeals about what we're doing. That's the reason that we're doing it. But yeah, thanks again for listening. And we'll see you next week when I think we're planning to... I think over the course of the next few episodes, we're planning to just take on these 4 second row guys and see if we can narrow down our selection.
Well, yeah, from my perspective, thanks, mate. I enjoyed learning about Big Goose. And guys, thanks very much for listening.
Take care.